Morning guys, Lawrence here. I'm down here in Richmond Park in London trying to get some snaps of a fascinating natural event. It's the red deer rutting season. So what is the deer rutting season? Well, it's the time of year when the big male deer, the stags as they're called, they bulk out due to all of their hormones rushing through their body. They often get quite a big kind of thick neck. And it's the time when you see them in the park clashing antlers, pushing against each other, competing for a group of females to mate with. And it's a genuinely spectacular event. It attracts photographers from far and wide, not just people like me using, this is a telephoto lens, pretty good for wildlife, but you know, you see some guys. Well, in fact, this morning, came down here, was going to take a few shots, obviously that was attached to the camera that you're now being filmed on. I was about 50 metres away from a herd. You don't want to get too close to a herd because they can get quite aggressive. I was sort of hiding in the bushes waiting to get a good snap. I thought I was the only person around, and then as soon as one of the big male stags walked out perfectly just into the light, and the light was absolutely beautiful, all of a sudden out of the bushes about 20 other photographers just jumped up. I thought I was the only one there. They were all in camouflage, not just camouflage all over their body, but like they had camouflage lenses. The lenses are like this big. Afterwards they got this great shot and they're all talking, some of them were talking in French, Spanish, Italian, you name it. It really does attract photographers from all over Europe who come here to film the rut every year. So during the rutting season, also called the mating season, the deer do exhibit a whole bunch of weird and wonderful behaviour that we're going to take a look at in just a minute. Firstly though, I want to tell you a little bit more about Richmond Park itself. With many miles of trails, it's a great place for keen bean active types like me to get their exercise. And it was a lockdown saviour for many, with everything from cycling to running to whatever on earth this guy's up to. What is this? Cross-country skiing on rollerblade things? Who knows? Anyway, what an absolute hero. But it's the natural beauty of the place that makes it truly special. Come here when there's no one else around, and it can genuinely feel like more of a wilderness than much of the managed, farmed landscape of rural England. It's no surprise then that it's classified as a site of special scientific interest, and it's also a national nature reserve, with close to 2,500 acres of hills, acid grasslands, and ancient woodland. Some of the trees here are over 800 years old, and when these trees do eventually die, it's actually this dead wood that underpins a lot of the ecosystem here. But that's a different story for a different time. So this landscape we see today has largely been shaped by the 600 or so free-roaming fallow and red deer. These are very much wild animals, but why are they here? Well, in 1637, King Charles I enclosed the whole area to make himself a new royal hunting ground. All the deer we see here today are descended from those he introduced almost 400 years ago. It's kind of odd, isn't it, to imagine the King of England casually riding around on a horse, probably half cut, hunting deer. After all, it was only a few years before the start of the Civil War that would eventually result in his demise. Anyway, enough blabbing on about that. You've got a feel for Richmond Park now, so let's get back to the visual treat that is the rutting season, and the different things you need to look out for. Well, there's a few key bits of animal behaviour that I'll describe now that you should look out for before you eventually see them clashing horns. One of the most obvious signs that you'll see immediately is that the males, their great kind of big thick necks at this time of year, instead of just walking around normally as they'll do most of the year, what they'll do is they'll kind of walk around very powerfully, really peacocking. So they'll stick their chest out like this, they'll put their chin up in the air, and they'll powerfully just kind of walk around very arrogantly like this. And that's really kind of sending a signal out to the females saying I'm the boss here. That's the general idea. The other reason for all this strutting about is not just to show off to the females, but it's also to intimidate other males in the area. Think about it. It's very easy to either look aggressive or timid, all depending on how you carry yourself. The second thing you'll see is the males actually running after the females, really sprinting after them. And the females are a bit like, excuse me, can you not run after me? Like most of the time you won't actually see them mating. You'll see the females just kind of running off out the way. It's not all about mating though, but also to prevent them wandering off. See, each dominant stag has a group of up to 40 females. They are free to come and go, but of course he doesn't want that, so he spends a lot of time running around trying to convince them otherwise. You'll also see the stags bellowing or roaring, so you'll often see them powerfully walk around. They'll stop, quite often it's in the sunshine, not really sure why, and they'll just put their heads up again and they'll give out these great big bellows. And what that's doing is that's signalling to other kind of competitive males in the area that, you know, this is my patch, this is my area, this is my bunch of females, because often what happens is one stag will have a kind of harem of females, if you like, that it then mates with. And then other stags who are kind of lone wandering stags try and compete with that male to push them out of the harem and then allow that male to step in as the dominant male and mate with those females. That's kind of how it works. A less common sight you might see is the males urinating on the ground, then rolling in it as a kind of weird aftershave to attract the females. Apparently, they're quite into it. But even if you don't see this, you are likely to see a lot of deer wallowing in the mud at this time of year as well. So when a challenger male comes along and tries to push the dominant male off its territory away from its females, what are some of the behaviours that you then see? Well, one of my favourite ones is when you see the stags, what they'll do is they'll get their big horns and they'll just go in the undergrowth, and they'll basically try and pick up random bits of foliage from the undergrowth, which will then get stuck in their horns like this. And you think, well, why the hell are they doing that? The reason why they're doing that, getting these bits of undergrowth trying stuck in their horns, is simply to make their horns, their antlers, look a lot bigger. And so if their antlers look a lot bigger, that's a lot more scary to the competitor males, and they'll think, oh, maybe I won't actually challenge that guy because he looks quite big because his antlers are huge, but really he's just got lots of random stuff stuck in it. The other reason for this behaviour is to clean their antlers after their new growth they've had that year, and this prevents parasites from attaching to them. The final one that you get before they turn and then they clash antlers is what they call the parallel walk. So if you imagine a deer or a stag, you know, they've got their eyes on the side of their head, so to size someone up, if you were a boxer, a human boxer, you would size someone up by basically kind of going face to face with them like this, and you're really kind of sizing them up, because our eyes are at the front of on the front of our faces because we're predators, right? But deer have got eyes on the side of their head like this, so they do the parallel walk to size each other up. So you'll get one walking like this, one walking like that, and then they'll walk along for about 50 metres or so, or often longer, just kind of like getting a feel for each other, thinking, can I take this guy? And then finally, after that parallel walk, they'll then turn and they'll clash antlers like this, and you often hear a real clashing sound or a rutting sound. So as you've probably guessed from watching a bit of this, rutting is basically one big pushing match. But how do they decide a winner? Well, the answer is surprisingly civilised. If you get one that's really pushing the other one back, the other one will say, you know what, I can't beat this guy, he's pushing me all the way back, and they just have an agreement being like, okay, fair enough, you won the fight, and then they'll just clear off and go and try their luck with a smaller male and see if they can get in there somehow and mate with the females. So you'll get these kind of random non-dominant males walking around trying their luck with different herds to see if they can get in there and mate, and that's how it works on an evolutionary basis. If you're not lucky enough to see the drama of the big males rutting, then fear not, because you've got a pretty good chance of seeing the youngsters. It seems deer love a bit of sibling rivalry, and without the aggressive build-up of the adults, you'll see juvenile males, often brothers, turn their heads to each other and play fight to their heart's content. So there we have it, that's all about the red deer rutting season. If you're ever in London in October, try and get down to Richmond Park at kind of really early in the morning or kind of around dusk time, and you might just see this fascinating, brilliant animal behaviour. see you next time. Hey guys, Lawrence here. You've caught me at home just chilling out and relaxing, warming up with a cup of tea with my brew. If you enjoyed that video, then please of course share it with your family and friends and whoever else. And I know I'm going to ask you, just like pretty much anyone who's ever put a video on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button wherever it happens to be on your player, because I've got some good material coming up and I don't want you to miss out. So please do hit subscribe. Cheers and adios.